Hello. This video serves as an introduction to emotional messages. Emotional messages are become one of the most difficult things to control and to master and to understand when it comes to interpersonal communication. So I'm going to run through a few different items from the chapter and hopefully leave you with some questions to think about. First, uh, emotions, okay, are a central part of any type of meaning. So if I'm standing here saying I love you, how we internalize that message is going to be based on feelings and emotions. For some, it's like, oh, that's really nice. My professor loves me like he loves all people, right? Others may be thinking, okay, well, that's starting to get a little bit creepy, right? And so emotions and context and everything are going to come into play. We oftentimes talk about emotional communication. When we talk about emotional communication, you might hear the words emotional intelligence or social intelligence. Both of those things, for our purposes here, mean the exact same thing. Okay. So when we're talking about emotional communication, we're talking about how adept you are at being able to understand and interpret somebody else's emotions, okay, and how that fits into their communicative message, and also how well and how adept you are at being able to encode messages with your emotions so that other people can get the meaning that you want. Now, we all know people who are not very good at emotional communication, right? And these are usually the people who seem to be smiling at a time when you shouldn't be smiling. People who are told shocking news who have no response, and it may seem like they don't know how they should respond and all that kind of thing. This is actually a learning disability called dysemia. And all dysemia means is that you're unable to read or communicate non-verbally. Okay, so again, this generally has to do with facial expression, since our emotions are non-verbally are displayed through facial expressions. All right, and this and having dysemia can be very, very difficult. It's hard to maintain relationships because people don't understand. They think that either you don't understand or that you are unfeeling in some sort of way, which is not necessarily the case. We just don't know how to express that in a nonverbal way that seems to uphold whatever the other communicator's view of the situation is. Okay. Obviously, you can work through dysemia. You can, learn the appropriate responses. You can learn how to explain yourself. You can learn how to probe further. So it's not debilitating or anything, but it does make maintaining interpersonal relationships much, much more difficult. Now, relationships can be blended, or they can be primary. Or emotions can be blended or they can be primary, I'm sorry. And the reason we talk about this is researchers really try to identify major emotions, like some very general major emotions that are similar across cultures. All right, and so when you look in your book, you're going to see it looks like a pinwheel, right? And this shows the primary and the blended emotions. So when you're looking at the pinwheel, the primary emotions that your book talks about are joy, trust. I think your book actually uses the word acceptance, but it's trust, fear, surprise, sadness, disgust, anger, and anticipation. All right, those become the emotions that are the most distinct. All the rest of the emotions, okay, are a blend of those 8 somehow, either in intensity, or in mixture. And if you look at the pinwheel, and if you look, say, for example, at joy, which is at the very top of the pinwheel, the opposite side of the pinwheel at the bottom is sadness. So those become two emotions that are very, very far away from one another. Okay? Unlike, say, joy and trust. Okay, so those become very close to one another, and what we see between joy and trust is love. And so you can see how these emotions can be mixed together. Now, we need to know that emotions are influenced by body, mind, and culture. And in a moment, we're going to be talking about the order in which we might experience these and how our emotions are impact us. But first of all, when you think about emotions and bodily reactions, think about the physiological reactions that you have. So if you have anxiety about giving speeches to audiences or speaking in public, you probably have an increased heart rate. You might begin to perspire a little bit. Your legs might start shaking. Your hands might start shaking. You might feel nauseous. All of those are physiological reactions. Now, those physiological reactions are based on an adrenaline rush because you're going into a situation in which you might feel some fear. Okay, so we know that that's what those physiological reactions are. However, think about if you feel disappointed or let down. Do you have that kind of tight feeling, that knot in your stomach? Okay, we could talk about what makes you cry is a physiological reaction. I'm one of those people, I have a tendency not to cry a lot unless it's a movie. I am a sucker for crying in those sappy movies, right? So I don't know what it is. I don't know why movies do that to me, but all of a sudden I'm just like, woo-hoo-hoo, boo-hoo. But again, it becomes a physiological type of reaction. We also can look at mental evaluations. All right, so we mentally evaluate our emotions, trying to determine what it is that we're feeling or what we should be feeling. And then we have the interpretations of the bodily reaction, the mental evaluation, and then the interpretation of all of that. Now, so we've talked about the body, we've talked about the mind, and when I was talking about interpretation, we're really talking about culture. Okay, so take a minute and think about what kinds of emotions is it okay for men and women to express within American culture. Some of us may say it is more acceptable for men to express aggressive emotions. Okay, and whereas it may be less acceptable for women to express aggressive emotions. Likewise, we are often taught that it's okay for women to express more loving emotions, more kind of caregiver emotions, whereas a lot of times men are within American culture not supposed to express those kinds of emotions. For example, I shouldn't have told you that I cry during sappy movies, right? That is not a very manly thing to do, but I don't care. So as you're going to see on the screen, I have a kind of quick graph up here on the PowerPoint that is going to show you three types of theories, essentially, about how we interpret emotional arousal. Okay, and we look at emotional arousal as a multi-step process. So the first theory, and we can just kind of call this a basic theory. The book doesn't really give a definition for this one or a title for this one. But what this states is that that an event occurs, that you experience an emotion, and then you respond physiologically. Okay, this is super, super basic. Okay, we know that these three things happen. Okay, so you're standing up in front of the classroom, getting ready to give your speech. Okay, you say the first word, and so you are at that point experiencing an emotion, and you're probably sweating, or heart is racing, or knees are knocking, or something like that. The next the next theory, the next one down, is the James Lange theory, which we could also refer to as kind of a theory, a physiological theory. And this one says that an event occurs, then you respond physiologically, and then you experience the emotion, for example, joy or sadness, right? So again, if we take the public speaking example, you're standing in front of the classroom, you're beginning to give your speech, you're perspiring, your heart is racing, all of those things are happening, and then you experience the emotion. This is nervousness. Okay. The last kind of process that is built in here is a cognitive labeling theory. So an event occurs, you respond physiologically, you interpret this arousal, you decide what emotion you're experiencing, and then you experience the emotion. Okay. So standing up in front of the classroom, starting to give your speech, you're having all of the physiological reactions, you're figuring out what that is. Okay, this is nervousness, this is stage fright, whatever. Then you experience it. You experience it because you are able to label it. There are times when we're not exactly sure what we're feeling, right? And when we're not sure what we're feeling, we kind of start going through this. Okay, I have a knot in my stomach. Am I scared? Am I just nervous? And am I excited? We kind of go through until we figure out what it is that we're feeling. Emotions are not always bad. Emotions can be helpful. They help you adjust to situations. They aid you in accomplishing particular goals. But emotions can be bad. They can get in the way of you accomplishing goals. They can definitely be debilitating if you're unable to manage them. We know that we communicate emotions both verbally and non-verbally. Emotions are part of all messages, okay, both verbal and non-verbal. You can, to a great degree, control which emotions you express. Some of us are better at doing that than others, but it is possible. And that display rules or facial expressions govern which emotions are permissible to communicate. All right, so think about, when do you choose the emotions that you communicate? If we start thinking about, it's very possible, sometimes we, cry and throw temper tantrums to get our way because we know that crying and throwing a temper tantrum is going to get our way. All right, that people will just give in. Something that we learned when we were toddlers, right? So we do the exact same thing. So again, so start thinking about, when do you choose your emotions? When is the best time to reveal your emotions? And when's the best time to hide them? Emotions are contagious. Okay, and we talk about emotional contagion. My mom has a tendency to be able to be an emotional contagion. So when she's really angry or upset about something, I have a tendency to get really angry or upset about it. Not a lot of other people have that impact or that effect on me, but I do have like one or two friends that can do that to me as well. So what happens is you perceive the emotion expression of others, you mimic that expression, perhaps unconsciously, and then feedback recalls and creates the feelings. Think about infants and toddlers. They have a tendency to mimic their parents, especially their mothers. You smile at an infant, it'll probably smile back at you. It's just a mimicking behavior, right? Same thing, we know that if one college roommate is depressed, that within 3 weeks it's possible for the other college roommate to be very depressed. Okay, so all of these become ways in which emotions can be contagious. The last thing I want to talk about has to do with positive emotional expression. You're going to want to be specific. You want to describe the reasons you're feeling as you are. You want to address mixed feelings. You want to own your feelings and take personal responsibility for them. And you also want to make sure that you're asking for what you want. Okay. And to respond to emotions, make sure that you're looking for verbal cues or nonverbal cues. Look for cues about what the person wants you to do. Listen actively. empathize, focus on the other person and not yourself. And you're going to find that when we talk about conflict, I always say, talk about yourself, don't talk about the other person, right? So talk about how you're feeling or how you perceive events, how events have unfolded, rather than telling the other person what they've done wrong, right? Because that never really helps. So that's all for this time. Make sure that you check out the resource folder. There's an interesting video on emotional intelligence in there.